What's up, guys? So we just wrapped up the Instagram live video, and in that live video I had suggested that the viewers, or the people watching the live along with me, just basically send in a bunch of questions, and I copied them down, and I figured I'd make a YouTube video about the questions that were asked and basically answer them in this video. So we'll get right to it. And this was actually a lot of fun because I got a lot of really cool questions, and if that's something that you guys want to do in the future, then maybe we can do it again. But for now, here's what I got. So starting right off, my buddy Lewis asks how to approach playing live and which amps and pedals to use. That's I think I know what you're getting at, and how do I approach to get what's my approach to getting my sound live. Basically, I think about the room that I'm in. If I'm going to need a really powerful amp or something low key, and I'll just make sure that I can get the sounds that I need out of that. And then as far as pedals, it's usually just the staples. I'll take a fuzz, a wah, and a drive if it was minimal. You know what I mean? And all of them, I really just make sure I can get the sound that I want out of them, and then go from there. SSS Stearns asks, what is my approach to improvisation? Well, I've never really, I never took lessons, and I never really got the whole tab thing understood. I don't know, it's because I have ADD or something. But basically, in my head, I'm just trying to capture, if I'm trying to play a certain song or something like that, it's the essence of what the song's trying to get across. And then as far as the playing, sometimes if you're just jamming, I just go where the guitar, the notes kind of send you. Sometimes you may think you're in a wrong spot, and just follow it, and it may bring you to something really sweet. That's what I do a lot of the time. I just tend to just play and not really think about it. That's why sometimes it really sounds bad, but sometimes you get these happy moments where you find something new and new places to go, and it keeps your playing fresh, and it doesn't make you repetitive or sterile. Aiden64 asks, what's my practice routine and how much time do I put into practicing? Well, as you guys know, I had a couple of hand surgeries, so my practice has been really when my hands are feeling good and when I'm allowed to, when my body's allowing me to. But lately, I've been doing a couple things to really help myself out, and I try to come home and practice, as much as I can. I'll just walk around the house with a guitar not even plugged in, and just keep working things in, and keep my hands in those circular motions and the moving, and always keeping in mind to stretch too. And I'll just try to do that. I'll always keep a guitar on the kitchen table or on my bed, when I'm walking by and I want to pick it up, especially if I'm feeling inspired, or if I just watch something. That way there's always one at arm's length, and I can always, practice or just fire off a couple things. And it's good too when something pops into your head, you have a guitar right there, and you can just try to sound it out, and then you kind of burn it to your brain, Cy Beckwith asks, how do I make my solos pop in a live situation? Okay, so I've talked about this before, but a lot of what I do is I get my tone, and I depend a lot on the volume knob of the guitar. So I will ride the volume knob a lot, so I don't really have a hard time cutting over the band, because obviously if you're playing with guys who respect what you're going for too, especially in a three-piece, they know that the front guy is trying to sound, pretty major. So I just always use my volume knob, and I try to have everything right there under my finger, so I can just reach down and just flick it up, and next thing you know, I'm cutting above the rest. So I mean, that's what I do. ZK Graves talked about a Bassman kit amp. He's thinking about building a Bassman kit amps. I think kit amps are really cool because you buy the kit and you save money, and usually the kit gives you everything you need to assemble it, and that's the best time to try some mods, because it's not like you're modifying a brand new Fender Bassman, or a vintage Fender Bassman where, mods are going to hurt. I mean, it's a kit amp, and to me, that's the time to try different things. Try a, Google online what guys are doing, or do some research and find out how guys are modifying these things, and then you can make your own adjustments and your own modifications, and you're not destroying something of considerable value, like a vintage instrument or a brand new, you know, something or other. My buddy Marcus, he's an amp builder and a guitar player, asks about 6550 versus 6L6 GC. Well, I mean, essentially they're all in the same family. I think a 6550 is just a really, really stout, stiff, strong version of the 6L6 GC. I feel as though the 6550s, they can handle the higher plate voltage going in, and the 6550 and the 6L6 are always going to be my favorite tube. I really like GEs for both. Another guy asks, what Octavia am I using and how do I set it up? Any mods? The Octavia I currently use is the Dunlop Cheese Wedge Octavio, and I found that to be for what I'm going for and for my needs. I mean, that's just the thickest, warmest sounding one. My buddy Philip Stace has been using one, and I know he likes it. The other ones are great. I have an old Roger Mayer, and I've you know, have the Chicago Iron, and I have a bunch of other ones. But right now, for my taste and what I'm going for, I usually will put that before the wah, right after the fuzz face. So I'll plug into the fuzz face for my guitar, and then go right into the Octavio. I usually set mine up with full volume and the drive at about halfway, and then I will, if I'm smashing the fuzz and the Octavia together, it's just, you know, sustain, big fat sustain. So that's what I like to go for. I don't really modify the inside of them. A couple of times I'll change the resistors out, not for different values, but for carbon comp ones, because I feel like they warm it up a little bit. That's just me. But yeah, the Dunlop Cheese Wedge Octavio is the one I like. J Poe, how do I hold my pick? What picks do I use? It's kind of weird. I don't, like, you know, I know that the guitar pick is designed to be held, you know, like this way, and everybody says that Stevie Ray Vaughan did it like this. I don't really use a lot of the pick. I picked up that deadening the string, you know, when you're playing like a shuffle beat. So I don't let a lot of the pick hit the string, and then when it does, I just make sure I'm kind of precise with it. But I kind of use, I think that much probably in my hand will stick out. Not that that's really like a tone secret or a must, you know, it's just really about what you guys, or as a player, you get comfortable with. But that's what I do. Simon Beckwith asks, one guitar, one amp, one pedal. It would probably be an old Stratocaster with an old Super Reverb with an old fuzz face, because you can get every kind of sound you want with that fuzz face in line there. So that would be it for me. Which one of my amps has the best reverb? That would be the Super Reverb that Tommy modified for me. He just recently this year started modifying these reverb pans for his enchilada mods, and it's the most lush wall of sound reverb that you'll ever hear, and that has the best reverb, and it can get out of hand too. I only keep my reverb at about 3 now because it really fills the whole room up. But it's an amazing, Tommy's a genius with the amps he builds. What is a fuzz recommendation for current fuzzes out on the market? So for the current fuzz, I've done some videos. I really like, I fully endorse Kingtone, Jesse Davies' company. Jesse has been in the lab for the last few months, totally redesigning his fuzz builds as well. So wait till you guys see what's coming out. But I really enjoy Jesse's fuzzes. Dan Drive really impressed me with his attention to what the old fuzzes should do. And the one characteristic with Dan's stuff is I liked is it was simple. He didn't try to reinvent the wheel. You're really just taking a pedal that's been perfect for the last 60 years and just putting your own flavor on it. And Dan's are phenomenal. And I also like to use Kyle Chase's stuff over at Chase Tone. His pedals are amazing, and I think there is one of those red velvet fuzzes coming out soon that he's going to send out to me so I can try, and I'm really looking forward to that because Kyle always has some kind of tricks up his sleeve. Michael Giota asks, what is an amp for an SRV sound? That could, you know, we could go a lot of places with this, but I mean, I really feel as though that's up to you. But if you were to just walk into like a Guitar Center and pick an amp, you can't go wrong with a blackface style amp. For SRV stuff and the louder playing, I mean, a Super Reverb is absolutely incredible. You know, most guys, the hardest thing with getting that sound is most guys don't like to accept the fact that volume comes along with it. And you know, it's usually, how do I get this sound? And then you give them an answer, say, oh, a super reverb on 7 or 8. Well, I can't turn up that loud. Well, you know, there's other ways to try to get it. You can get it through a deluxe if you really tube it and speaker it the right way. But I mean, it's also about working with what you have too, and you know, finding it in your stuff, not having to buy something to sound a certain way. Sometimes it's in there. It just needs, you need to find your path and carve your own path in the gear you have. Lewis asks again, selecting the right power tubes. I think he was asking, you know, how power tube selection is gonna. How do you know what power tube's gonna do? And I think, you know, with older power tubes, I mean, I think that comes from a lot of spending really alarming amount of time playing with tubes, and you know, testing them out in amps. You know, a GE or an RCA is very, very classic Fender kind of volume up there. It starts to sag the right way, starts to get a little squishy on you. I've recently spent some time with Sylvanias and old Sylvanias and found them the Sylvania tubes to be the stiffest as far as forgiveness. But either way, I mean, it just takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of trial and error, and it takes a lot of, you know, money spent. Sometimes you get a set of tubes in, and one of them's bad, and that's just the way it goes, you know. But spending time with them and knowing the characteristics of what certain tubes will do, you know. I mean, I know if I have an amp that's a little too stiff, and it's not really giving me, it's not really like a set of old Jans in a deluxe reverb sometimes can be very, very stiff, and I could try a set of RCAs or a set of GEs, and I know that'll give me a little bit of that sag I want. And then totally opposite, you know, if I have an amp that's kind of getting mushy and kind of losing its backbone, then I'll slide a set of, like, you know, reissue tongue saws in, or a Sylvania, or you know, for 6550s for the newer stuff, I like the old SED Wing Cs. They're really, really great. Whew, my top 5 favorite records. Well, it's funny because last week we just did a video on some records, but I would have to say that Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland, B.B. King Live at the Regal, Albert King, the live record. It's a double album, and you can pretty much learn every Albert King lick from that record. Donny Hathaway Live, I really liked, even though it wasn't the best quality. I like the feel from Stevie Ray Vaughan's Live Alive, and Doyle Bramhall Welcome. Those are albums that really, really influenced me, and they really, really, I listen to them probably. I will listen to a cut off one of those records once a week, you know. But any of those, I mean, they're just phenomenal records. Somebody asked, can you tell us about your 59 Strat? Yeah, I've done a video on this before, but this is my 1959 Stratocaster. The original saddles, the original pick guard, pickups. It's been refretted. It's on its 2nd refret. And it's just, this is my favorite guitar. I mean, I have a couple of Strats, and this one has a different sound. It's a really, really great guitar. You know, it's just served me well, and it's really starting to get worn in now. I never really understood how, you know, some of those guitars ended up looking the way they did, and where they're all worn over here, you know. And I used to say, like, man, it never really happens. But over time, when you just don't pay attention and you just play it, stuff like that starts to happen, and they have a little groove there, you know, and it's starting to just take its own, and it definitely has its own character. I really pride this guitar that all of the components are original to the guitar. I actually had a volume pot give me a hard time, and I repaired it, and I transferred the middle position tone pot, put that up at the volume, and swapped it so I could have all the electronics still be original. I did have the pickups remagnetized, and I've never broken a whammy bar in the stock tremolo block. I do swap the tuners out because 60-year-old tuners don't like to stay in tune. They don't like to hold tension. And other than that, I feel as though on an old guitar, the springs from sitting for so long will kind of lose their tension. So I just put a new set of springs, but I do have all the original stuff that I put aside. And that's it. That's my 59 Strat. Siraj HS asks, how can I get more fluent with SRV say style licks? I don't really know. I mean, those are two, Stevie Ray Vaughan was one of the most, greatest guitar player that ever lived, and Philip Sace he's another great player. But I think a lot of that has to do with listening and listening to the little nuances, you can learn a song like Pride and Joy, and you can learn something like, Texas Flood note for note, but it's really capturing the feeling behind it, And I think a lot of that just comes from those little nuances and those little things that Stevie would do with his thumb that you can hear, you can pick up on. And that's how I think those things start coming to you. And somebody gave me a good piece of advice one time is you learn it and forget it. And I think a lot of that stuff, what they're trying to say is get comfortable with it and then walk away from it. And then you'll notice as you start becoming your own player, a lot of those styles will come out in your playing, because that's just you speaking a different language and then going back to your own. SS Stearns asks again, 70 Strat or newer, and also advantages and disadvantages of vintage to, say, a custom shop. Well, the older guitars, you do obviously have the vintage, mojo or the aura, the vintage value, but with the older guitars, you also have the vintage upkeep. These guitars they were essentially made from a hardware store, and they constantly need maintenance to me, and they constantly need upkeep, and the pots. I feel like the pots will get scratchier faster, and the switch sometimes will just get stuck. And, it's with any guitar, I mean, you're always keeping an eye on the fretboard, and you're always keeping an eye on the neck relief and making sure your frets aren't getting dulled out. I think that the custom shop is great. It's not like a vintage guitar at a cheaper price, but I think that it's a dependable, and it has less quirks, and it's got the look, they can make them look old, and I have both, Fender, Dale Wilson made me a guitar a long time ago, and I have that. I still have that one, and it's great. But I mean, I try to play my old ones as much as I can because they're really special to me. All right, so this next question is, how did I get into repairing amps? Well, it was just basically not having the money to pay somebody to fix it and trying stuff and asking the right questions and, getting electrocuted and burning my fingers. And then I can remember, one day finally fixing something and having it work. And I was like, well, okay, with enough time and enough patience, it can happen. I'm a mechanic by trade, so I always try to fix something before I condemn it. So, I mean, just really having an understanding for how things work, having a good multimeter, a tube tester, bias meter, good soldering iron and soldering skills. Those are things that really, you can learn a lot just from trial and error and trying different things. And a lot of the times I wouldn't give up. And if there was a way I could try to backtrack and find out why something happened, I would do that too. You know what I mean? And it takes time and it takes patience. But it's what I enjoy. Like when I'm done building cars for the week, I really enjoy having a repair project to come home to on the weekend, because to me it just separates my brain from everything that's going on. So when I was young, I just couldn't afford it, and I had to figure it out myself. Well, not really young, but we're talking 10 years ago when I first got into guitars. I remember the first time an amp went down, I blew the heater resistors off that come off the pilot lamp. And I didn't know what the hell to do, but I could smell something, and then I had my nose in the amp, using that as a guide to smell. And when the smell got stronger, I looked and I could see that they were burnt. I swapped them out and it worked. So, I thought I knew everything then. How did I get into vintage gear? Basically, I just thought, I saw the mystique into it, and I don't know, I look at an old guitar and I look at an old amp, and I can really I enjoy the story that's with it. I enjoy the pot codes, and you can almost be like an investigator, and you can you almost put a birthday to it in a way, and just researching it, I really liked I really liked all the things that came along with it. And I'm not saying that old guitars are better than new guitars, because I mean they're not. There's a lot of old guitars that are just really, really bad. But there's something like that feeling of like, I'm gonna go buy a vintage 335 today, or I'm gonna go buy a vintage Strat, or I'm gonna put this vintage Strat together, or I got the last piece of this that I needed. I mean, there's something fun and exciting behind that. And I mean, I'm 35 years old, but it's still exciting to me. I love pulling a guitar all apart and researching it, and you know, basically finding the history out on my own. That's a lot of fun for me. That's how I got into it, you know. And I still do. I like old switches, old three-way switches, and old pots. I like to, you know, write down date codes and values, and I keep a logbook of everything I have. It's something I do. It's just fun. I mean, it keeps me sane in a way. Lux Tenebrizo asks, ballpark prices on pre-CBS player grade guitars. Well, if it's a player grade, you're probably going to deal with a refin. If it's a, you know, like a Stratocaster, you're probably going to deal with a refin and a refret. You may have a pickup that's been swapped out or rewound. And I really feel, to me, as far as tone, when you're buying, you know, an old Stratocaster, I look at it having the original bridge, the 3 pickups, the neck, and the body. To me, I feel, well, the pots too, to be honest with you. The pots are really important, I feel, as far as tone. You know, you can deal with a humbucker route that's not going to kill the guitar. It may kill your heart, but it's not going to kill what the guitar is doing for you. You know what I mean? And some guys that rewind them, you know, they rewind them really, really good. A lot of guys, when they rewind pickups, they try to put them like way over 6K to make it like such a strong pickup, but you kind of lose so much. And if it's been refretted, you kind of look at the fretwork and see who did it, and if it was done right, if it was kind of hacked in there. As far as prices, I mean, my 61 Strat was a refin and a refret, and it seemed like I couldn't sell it for $9,000. Luckily, I didn't sell it because I've fallen in love with the guitar again. It's an amazing guitar, but I mean, I bought both of my guitars really, really cheap, just because maybe I was in the right place at the right time. But I also, you know, knew what I was looking for, and I knew what I was looking at. But I mean, you can find Strats anywhere from, you know, 5,000 with issues to 10,000 just a refin and a refret. And I mean, the Strat market is up and down all the time. You know what I mean? But just keep a sharp eye and know what you're looking for, and you'll be able to find something. Another question: how I found out about SRV and how I was brought to blues music. Well, I said it in that inspirational Strat players video. Jimi Hendrix brought me to Stevie Ray Vaughan because I knew that I saw Stevie had covered Jimmy, and you know, I checked him out, and then I watched the El Macambo video, and that was pretty mind blowing. And ever since then, I've just been, you know, head over heels for everything Stevie's done. And I mean, I think there's, with the blues music, I mean, I thought there was something real about it. It was, you know, you heard the like the quirkiness in their voice, and you heard their guitar out of tune, and you just heard them going, their ability to try to express emotion. And to me, that's the purest form of music. I mean, it's direct. They're saying what's on their mind. You know, you got to think all that stuff started. Those are field songs. Those guys were, you know, singing to field songs and working in the field, and you can imagine that. You know, the heat and the malnourishment and the tired and the pain they were in, and some of the most beautiful stuff was written from that. So I mean, I think it's a show of respect to it, you know what I mean, in a way, and I love that stuff. And nothing hits me harder than Albert King's Blues Power breakdown when he comes in after the second verse. I mean, that's all it right there, you know. Blues Power Live, just listen to that, and you hear him come in after that second verse, and it kills me every time. Greg Beast asks, pros and cons of high-powered speaker on a low-wattage amp. Well, that is a, you know, on these low wattage amps, if you want a little more clean headroom, that's a great way to get clean headroom, but you're also going to sacrifice a little bit of that normal, you know, just normal breakup. So I really feel as though if you had a 12 watt, 15 watt Princeton reverb, 200 watt EV is probably not going to be the best speaker for that. You know, but something that can hold itself, but also allow some of the characteristics of the amp to shine through as well. It's about finding a happy medium and what works. With the high powered stuff, like the Cougar heads I use, or like a super reverb. I use JBLs in my super reverb, and they're stout, but JBLs are known to give that crystalline kind of breakup way up on the top end. That's what I go for with the amp. And then I set the EQ for the amp itself. I don't just set the EQ because I saw somebody do it on a Instagram picture. You know what I mean? That's the worst to do, because you're not playing their setup. You don't have their hands. You're not in the room they're in. So I mean, those little knobs are meant to be moved to what you like, what you want to hear. Setting a fuzz with drive and vibe. Well, with the fuzz, if you have the amp loud enough, and I think that a fuzz pedal is really dependent on amp volume, but if you have the amp loud enough, I usually just put the fuzz volume anywhere from 3/4 to full, and I don't really have a lot of fuzz set, because if your amp is already pushed, you won't really need it. The amp will assist the fuzz instead of the amp not being strong enough, and then you step on the fuzz and it just sounds hissy. And I think that has a lot to do with the vibe as well. A vibe will kind of do that hissy thing, and that has a lot to do with the amp volume. I try to get a thick vibe sound, and then use my volume knob and bring it down a little bit if I have the fuzz on. And then setting a drive with both of those, I just want the drive to be transparent and just a volume boost. I don't want it to be like to try to overdrive a fuzz face or overdrive a univibe, because I already have my amp loud enough. My amp's already making natural breakup, and I just want that drive to just be put on, and it just takes it that little bit higher. How do I set an amp up for a gig with volume? I'll usually dial in what I want to hear as far as volume from the amp, and I'll make sure I'm getting all the breakup and the rhythm sound I want. I'll dial in my rhythm sound on the amp, and then I'll just accommodate. If it's too loud, I'll spin the amp around. I'll also use a big road case and put it around the front of the amp, cover the amp with a blanket, whatever you can do to keep everybody happy. And that's what I'll do. But I don't sacrifice my ability to play the amp that I spent money on for a venue. You know what I mean? It's about being respectful to the venue in the same sense. If they say you're too loud, well, you know what you need to play, and you just try to accommodate everybody, and you do what you got to do to be respectful of the venue, and also respect the sound, the tone, and what you're trying to go for at the same time. And lastly, what strings and picks do I use? I use Diodario. I've always used Diodario. Well, I really like what Diodario offers. I use a 56, 38, 28, 17, 15, and 11. Or 17, 14, 11. And that seems to be my set. As far as picks, I was using heavy picks for a long time, and I'm back to just the Fender mediums. There's certain ones you can buy that are a little bigger around here. Not too big, but I like the Fender mediums. I think they just have a little lusher sound. I know it sounds silly, but you can hear them in the playing, And sometimes I'll realize, like, if my hands are out of shape, I'll need to go back to the heavy pick because I can nail the string a little better, and it helps. Too heavy of a pick can choke off the string too for you too, and your left hand vibrato. If you're trying to vibrato the shit out of a note, you can also choke it out that way. So it's all about what works for you, in the end. So there was some questions from the Instagram Live. I had a lot of fun, and I was really amazed, and I was thankful that everybody sent all those questions in. If this is something you guys found fun, I actually like doing this because I could talk about guitars and amps and setups all day. It doesn't bother me at all. So if it's something you guys want to do, leave a comment down below, or send your questions to my Instagram direct message. I can gather a bunch more questions, and we can do this again. This was a lot of fun. I thank everybody who went on the Instagram Live and submitted their questions in. I hope I shot all you guys out, and I gave you a nod. I appreciate it. And yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I was glad to answer some of these. I hope it helps. I hope you guys can take something away from this, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Peace.